What is good, Pamelia? This is Kuya Estilo.
And I'm Trish.
And you are on the Sweet Spaghetti Podcast.
Yeah, you are.
Today, we got a special dish to serve up to you. A handsome man, a guapo man, a pogie boy. Kenan Eames, who is a good friend of mine. He is an actor, model, came out of San Diego, did high fashion in New York City, and now he works as a full-time actor here in Los Angeles. We're going to learn all about his journey from getting here, working in the entertainment industry, and finding out, like, how do you make it as a full-time actor with no side gigs? And he's done some incredible stuff. Featured on Hawaii Five-0 for a guest star role recently. He's been in numerous commercial campaigns. And now he's cooking up his own project, so no without that. And 5, 6, 7, 8.
Sweet spaghetti. Why is that spaghetti so sweet?
Funky sweet spaghetti.
Welcome to the Bustos Podcast.
We're changing our name right now.
That's a great...
Executive decision.
You know, we got my boy Kenan here. She's saying we're going to get messy. Are you ready for it?
You don't have to.
hey, we'll go wherever this takes us, you know what I mean? Like, we just going to keep it real. We going to keep it authentic. We going to keep it flavor, you know what I mean? We going to bring the flavor, bring the taste buds, you know, all that.
All right, that's up. Okay, well, I'm feeling kind of maybe why you said messy now. Because Kenan, I told you we're going to do some exciting stuff today.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to start off with a little bit of, am I the asshole?
Ooh.
You want your hot take?
How's your moral judgment like?
My moral judgment, man. You know, I feel like I got a pretty strong moral compass. You know, I feel like I navigate the world through a lens where I'm always trying to do good and support people. So, yeah, I feel like, you know, I got a good head on my shoulders. You know, shout out to my mom and Lola.
Hey, but do you also enjoy judging people? Because that's what we're going to do right
Yeah.
Ooh, judge. Ooh. You know, I feel like we all a little bit judgmental. So, yeah, why not? Let's take a swing for it.
All right, so you ready for this? Am I the asshole? The title is, we pulled these off of Reddit. So the title is, am I the asshole for divorcing my wife and telling everyone that she cheated on me? So I'm 28-year-old male, been married to my wife, 29, for 2 years. Dated her for 4 years. I won't lie, I still love her and still do, and it still hurts me a bit to let her go, but I have no other choice but to divorce because she betrayed me. I found out that my wife cheated on me, but she didn't actually cheat. She was just kissing someone while dancing with them. To be honest, I never suspected her, and there were no red flags either. But when I checked her phone, or there were no red flags when I checked her phone until one of her friends I barely know showed me a photo. I asked her multiple questions, like, did she sleep around? Or has she been kissing a lot of people? She said it never happened before, but she was drunk. And the friend thought that I should know. So when I confronted my wife about it, she said, yeah, it was me. I did do it. And I told her I was divorcing her. She said she was shocked. And she said that she knew I would probably get mad, but she didn't think a divorce would be on the table after a 6-year relationship just over a kiss. So I said I would leave, and she tried to stop me. She and both of our families both called me a lot, sent me angry texts saying that I was wrong for wanting the divorce, but I ignored them, you know, and started just continuing to live my life as a single person. When I had enough of the texts and stuff from the family, he hadn't told the family and friends why. So then
They just knew he's divorcing.
They just knew he was divorced. So then he tells everybody, I'm doing it because she kissed somebody. She says he's going too far by telling everybody the reason, and he's being kind of an asshole for, like, telling everyone she kissed somebody, and that's why it's happening. So is he in the wrong? Is she in the wrong? Who's in the wrong? The family?
Messy, honestly, like, I don't know, like, loyalty is everything to me, you know? I feel like honest communication, you know, understanding boundaries, I feel like is such an important part in any relationship. So the fact that they've been together this long and they hadn't talked about it, that's a red flag. Like, their emotional maturity is just gone. So if anything, man, they all walk in red flags.
They're like, everyone's the asshole.
Yeah, both of them. Like, why would you even be in a relationship with someone like, you know, why would you be in a relationship with someone like that in the first place if they're not trustworthy?
Yeah.
You know, so In my mind, they both red flags. They both crazy. They both for the streets, you know?
What was the photo of? The friend said that there was a photo.
There was a
Like, of the
photo.
kiss?
Dang.
That's
Let me see.
receipts.
This needs to be like a whole Netflix series.
Yeah,
Or
I need
like,
to know
what was
the
that
details.
cheater show
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they like run up on you and they record you?
Oh, yeah, what's that
dude,
called?
Homeboy got stabbed for doing that.
Oh.
Oh, you remember that?
Yeah.
What?
You don't remember that? The dude who was the host of Cheaters, they pulled up on somebody and he actually got like stabbed during.
Did he die?
No, he lived,
Oh,
but he got stabbed.
Hey, that's
That's
street cred right
crazy.
there. Respect.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
this only says that the photo. It sounds like the photo was her kissing. It sounds like also like
took a photo of them
I was
kissing.
gonna say I'll keep it a buck. Like I would never step out of my relationship, but I also don't have friends that would be like, let me capture this moment if it was happening.
Yeah,
Right.
Everybody is straight up an asshole in this story. Wait, what do you think?
You know, I think it's tough. I will say this. I listened to a podcast and it changed a little bit of my perspective on this. Dan Savage,
Mhm.
he does a podcast about relationships, sex, all this stuff. And he was saying, even if somebody cheats in like a long-term relationship, he was saying, generally speaking, they've been very good at monogamy. So if you've been together a long time, they have like, if you're talking about batting averages, they're like, they've actually done really good at that up until this moment of failure, of weakness or whatever. So his whole thing was like, you got to hash that out in your own relationship. But it was a way of framing it like, hey, nobody's perfect. And you got to decide all the good things in that relationship. And if you're going to be able to work together past this moment of weakness, of betrayal, whatever it is. So I did have a respect for that viewpoint. Personally, like it would be game over for me.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'd be jealous, dude. I'd be like,
For real.
y'all
I'm in
kissing
that
at the
same-
club. I'd
No,
be
for
mad.
real.
What's your thought? Sounds like you got a totally different
No,
take than us.
No, I think the thing about relationships and me having been in different, obviously we've all been in different types of relationships, but
Mhm.
I feel like we all make our own rules and it really obviously just depends on the couple. If that's his boundary, then he has every right to draw that boundary.
Mhm.
And she will eventually and should respect that. I think it's all about patterns too. And it's like, what does that stepping out mean to the person? Was that truly just a moment of like messiness?
Mhm.
Or is there something deeper that are they unfulfilled in their life? Like, what does that mean to them? And what does that mean for the relationship? So it's so contextual. I don't know.
I agree.
So it's very
No, I agree.
gray.
If it comes down to just being the asshole over telling people that she kissed somebody, I'd be like, you're not an asshole for that. I think if everybody's coming for you and they're like, why are you doing it? I think it's okay to say like, hey, here's what happened. And
Yeah.
for me, that was I couldn't get past that. And honestly, like as the person who did it, I think there's a level of like, if I did that, I would try to own my responsibility of it and be like, I understand why this happened. It's because I did something wrong. But
Yeah.
Accountability is everything. Honestly, like in every relationship, like you spoke about boundaries. It's just interesting how her friend would take a photo of her. So if anything, there might be a pattern of her constantly doing that when she's
And the
out.
rate.
You
Oh.
know, like the fact that, sometimes you got snakes in your own grass, so for me, like the fact that, does this gentleman have a name or is it just like an anonymous?
it's anonymous.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll
I
just
mean,
call
I
this
don't know.
guy Bob, I guess.
Bob.
Bob Wood.
Yeah, come on, Bob. Like, if you're in a relationship with this person and she's had these patterns of, acting out or being a little bit too flirty, like, you already had so many opportunities to get out of that. So for you to, put her on blast, like, I respect that, talk your smack, whatever, she cheated. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know, I feel like it feels more embarrassing for a man to get cheated on. It's pretty equal, but for a dude to get cheated on, it feels pretty bad. Like, I've been cheated on.
The chismes or not the chismes, the machismo kind of like.
Yeah, it hurts more.
A divorce lawyer was talking about this, actually. There's a huge difference between how men and women view cheating. The first question that women would ask is, did you love her? Or do you love her? Whereas the man is like, did you fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas, and there's also like systemic things, like underpinnings in this. It's
Yeah.
more like, for men, it's like, did you touch my property? I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
that's not
it
what
is.
you're thinking.
Yeah,
but
yeah. There's a possessiveness.
Yeah.
Like
100.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Damn.
But that's real, though, man. Like, But that's when you got a real one, lock that down, stay loyal. Shoo. We don't want none of this, you know?
That's right.
We don't want none of this type of drama in our lives. Reddit be messy, man.
Reddit
It's
is
crazy. But hey, it's also therapy in a way,
Yeah.
right? You know, learning from other people's mistakes,
yeah.
right? Like, we don't want that.
Well, let's get into that. Let's get from learning from mistakes because, obviously, I haven't given the full introduction, but Kenan here, one of my homies, actor, model, multi-hyphenate, pogie boy. Also, I don't know if I'm your stuntman or you're my stuntman, but it kind of goes both ways with auditions. Oh, I've never told you this. When we can't do gigs, we send them to each other.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
Like,
plug
so if
time.
he has a model gig, he sends it to me. They're like, I need a brown dude with long hair. It's like, bet,
Oh, man, we got to,
Just don't make me shave. That's
Now,
fine.
I was wondering, are you like interchangeable? Do you have to like shave?
I don't, but I would have him. Maybe you could grow your.
Yeah, here and
Yeah.
there.
You're like, give me a couple months.
Yeah, if anything, it's more like, we always try to push the representation, and anyone that just does good work and, represents the culture in a high level, like, I'm always just trying to plug people, because in order to create more opportunities for people like us, we also have to occupy different spaces where we're not really involved a lot in. So if anything, like, I appreciate you for all the opportunities you've given me and vice versa. We try to feed each other, and, it's a community thing. So yeah, man,
Definitely.
that's how we stay busy. Everybody got to cut a check.
That's
right.
right. And you're a Dago Filipino.
Yeah, you already know.
So Dago Pinoy. What I know you came from athletics first growing up, but were you trying to do acting, modeling? Like me, I was like making my younger siblings be in like sketches and stuff as a kid. Was that something you were doing early on, or were you doing sports first? Like, what was your journey youth-wise?
Man, honestly, like, I grew up in such an amazing era and time. Like, I was born in 92, so I'm a younger millennial, so man, like, just growing up how I did in Mira Mesa, Rancho Penasquitos. I grew up in an apartment complex, so I was just always active, whether it was like b-boying or hip-hop culture. That was pretty much what I was surrounded by growing up. And obviously sports, like, played a lot of basketball. Football was my main sport. Playing manhunt, pine cone wars. We just chucking pine cones at each other.
Wait, what's manhunt?
What's
Manhunt? Oh, it's like a giant game of tag. Like
werewolf?
yeah, I guess, yeah.
Okay.
okay.
So it's like, yeah.
Werewolf, but that's not like a physical game, right?
Well, I don't think I played werewolf, but manhunt is like, it's like two teams. One's like, it's like giant hide and seek. Pretty much.
that's right.
Right, yeah, werewolf. Okay.
And you got a safe area.
Yeah.
And if somebody you got to book it to like the
That-
safe zone.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
exactly.
horror movie prompt. Like,
No,
so
straight up.
long.
It's a great way to get hurt as a kid.
No,
Like,
definitely.
fuck yourself up.
No, for real.
All in and shit.
No, for real. That, and then on top of like pine cone wars, like, we just be throwing stuff at each other, tackle football, throwing fades at the park, fighting who's next on the basketball court.
How many
like,
siblings did you have?
Me, I actually have one adopted brother and I have two half siblings. So honestly, I kind of grew up like the only child. I was like the only boy of what? I had one other cousin, but I was like the youngest at the time, the only boy. So I was kind of spoiled. I was raised by like my Lola and my titas just because I grew up with a single parent,
Yeah.
just my mom. But my mom worked a lot. She was a flight attendant for Southwest Airlines.
My mom,
Yeah.
also a single mom, grew up. She's a flight attendant. So,
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's awesome. Yeah, my mom used to work for Filipino Airlines back in the day.
Nice.
Yeah, so that's kind of like how my family came to America. And then so when I, growing up, my mom was working a lot. And yeah, I was just always outside. I got involved in sports early just because, I didn't really have like a father figure growing up like that. So, my mom felt like I was one of those kids who was really active into sports, ADHD, getting in trouble in school. So yeah, just being in sports programs and being around like other men and just getting all this, energy out, I feel like really like helped shape just how I see the world and how I carry myself.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
So can I ask a question, a personal
Yeah.
question? I've seen you post about your dad.
Yeah.
So is that an adopted dad? Is that
No,
your real
that's
dad?
my biological father. So I met my pops actually like 2018, but we would talk on the phone like growing up,
Okay.
like 2014, 2015. And then I met a lot of my like Mexican American family out in LA just because my family is mostly in like Arizona and Utah.
Okay.
And then so, yeah, like I met my father later in life, but I always knew I was mixed growing up,
Because he was in the Navy, right?
Yeah, he was in the Navy. So, he kind of worked in like, I can't really say just because he kind of worked like as a SEAL, and he was also doing a lot of like underground stuff. So some of the things he couldn't really tell me that he did, but he worked in like special forces. So it's kind of one of those things why he kind of wasn't always in my life, just because like his work and him traveling and just how life was. Like when I got to talk to him, he told me what happened. So it's, it's one of those things where meeting my father and growing up a Filipino, knowing I was Mexican, and then meeting my Mexican American side of my family was just a really healing experience.
Yeah.
And affirming.
Because your dad's Mexican and your mom's side is
Filipino, yeah.
Okay.
So little Mexipino,
So are you more connected? Would you say growing up to one side more than the other? Because
I would say it's pretty even, just because like my environment was Dago, so that's all like Chicano culture. So I grew up heavy where all my neighbors was like Mexican Americans, South Americans, African Americans, Filipinos as well. I feel like my Filipino family was really connected within the Filipino culture out in Mira Mesa, Rancho Mosquitoes, National City. I remember my grandparents were really into like ballroom dancing. And so they would like dress up, and they do like mini pageants for the elderly. And so I remember going there as a kid, and they do like all the different dances. They try to get all the kids to dance. So I kind of felt like music, culture, family time, like was really a foundation of who I am, And even though like I grew up like half Filipino and people didn't really recognize me as Filipino at first, I always felt like that was who I am in my soul, Even also Mexican, regardless of, I didn't really grow up with it in the household. Like most of my friends growing up were Mexican, it's just natural attraction, or other Native American friends of mine. So it was always like I connected with brown people easily,
There's like I forgot what it's called. There's a psychological thing though. Like you naturally will form groups even in like a more diverse environment with people that you feel more directly linked with, and it can be based on like aesthetics or whatever.
Yeah, it's like survival in a way, just because I already know growing up in the 90s, in elementary school, they automatically put you in ESL if you're like a brown kid who has a family that speaks other language, even though, my family kind of was assimilated in the way where they wanted me to really know English well, just because that was what was pushed. And, they tried to teach me Tagalog, but it was one of those things where, like, it's up to me now to be more fluent and be better at it. Like, I know some words, I understand, when they cuss me out and call me bastos, we sit, all that stuff. But, definitely I'm trying to take it upon myself to be better, so when I do go back to the motherland, I'm able to connect with, our family out there.
Right.
Do they speak in Tagalog around you?
Yeah, honestly, yeah. My family's mostly from Bicol, so they speak like Bicolano. I remember growing up, my Lola, she spoke like 5 different languages. Like like Tagalog, Bicolano. She spoke like Pampangan, some Spanish, and then English. Yeah. So it's just one of those things where growing up, it's just beautiful to like hear those different dialects and hear all the different just sounds and vocal tonality, and eat the types of foods that she would cook that were specific to where my family grew up. Like I remember eating Bicol Express. My
favorites.
Yeah, my Lola made like awesome Bicol Express, and at the local joint, the Filipino spot, they didn't have that there. So it was one of those things where like
regional.
Like Park's Finest then.
Yeah, man, I love Park's Finest.
That coconut adobo.
Yeah, man. Yeah, they do everything great, man. Shout out Sparks Finest, man.
Kuya, John, Eric.
Heck yeah, man.
Dude, so you grew up in Dago. You have this experience there, and then eventually you find your way to New York. Now, when you get to New York, I know you worked in fashion out there.
Yeah.
Was that like for college? Was that for sports that took you out there initially, or how? I want to kind of get into like how did you end up in modeling and entertainment, and what was it that kind of gave you that spark to take the leap? To go from like I don't know, we all have our doubts going into something.
Yeah, definitely.
Because moving to New York, that's no joke.
Yeah, honestly, I'm grateful because I have family out there that live out in Queens.
Okay.
So it's one of those things, like, when I did take that leap to go out there, I was kind of, like, I was still kind of in college. I was, like, 21, just trying to find ways to make money, tired of working minimum wage while I was going through the JUCO system. I was playing football at the time. I kept getting injuries, and I was just kind of like a failed athlete. Honestly, I was trying to navigate, get a scholarship. My first love was always like sports and like music. Honestly, like I was a hip hop nerd, grew up a b-boy, so like those were like my two loves at the time. And then when all these injuries kept happening, and I realized like, man, I suck at school. Honestly, I was told to do nursing, that didn't work, and then they're like, oh, try business. So I was doing business, just didn't have the attention span to work on spreadsheets and do that type of stuff, like accounting classes. And then that's when I kind of shifted and dabbled into film. And then that love for film and storytelling, kind of helped me want to experience New York and try modeling, because I always looked at modeling as another form of storytelling. And I was actually getting heavily recruited to model back in the day when I was like in high school and early college. But at the time, I just wasn't interested in it. I just feel like I didn't really see people like me modeling, so I just felt like that was like a weird ask. I was like so focused on sports, like, nah, football, I'm so tough, toxic male ideology. And then when you're broke, you're like, hey, maybe
you're bad. Your picture's not bad.
Like, yeah, show some abs real quick.
Yeah, at the time, yeah, I was, back in the day, but now it's like we eating too good, you know what I mean? But it's all, we
when
stay
you hit 30, man, it's a little.
Yeah, no, straight up, man. And it's like one less scoop of rice, you know what I mean? But yeah, so that transition going to New York, and I was grateful I had support from my family. My family really held me down. My mom was the person that really supported that dream and that vision, just because when I didn't really see it, my mom dabbled in like modeling in the Philippines, and she used to do a lot of hair campaigns in San Diego when I was young. So she was like hustling, trying to make ends meet. She'd be flying. She'd go to do a shoot. She didn't really book a lot. She was a great model. But at the time in the early 90s, diversity wasn't a thing. Like, it was really rare to see like other minority groups. It's mostly just, Caucasians, Americans getting a chance to model, not really like Southeast Asians. People didn't really know how to label Filipinos at the time. So like when I did go to New York, it was a struggle just because that main market there is very high fashion focused, and Latinos and Asians, especially Southeast Asians, were like the least booked demographic. And at the time when I went there, it was like 2012, 2013.
When you gotta be 6'1".
Yeah, 6'1". Like I barely hit the mark. I'm right there. You know what I mean? And then it's also like just the time, like before social media, the modeling industry was very like narrow-minded with what they wanted, especially during the season, whether it's like summer or like fall, winter. So my agents at the time wanted me to be there for the summer season so I could audition for like swim week and all like the more like summery vacation style fish.
Tropical.
Yeah, exactly. So I was
Habitat.
Yeah.
You in your habitat.
Yeah, straight up.
Environment.
Exactly. But honestly, it was still a struggle. I'd book smaller gigs, like showroom stuff, not really like big campaigns. And at the time, like I was like, man, is this even worth it? Like I'm sleeping on the floor in like my aunt's studio in New York, out in like Upper East Side Manhattan. And, I'm coming home at like 2 a.m, like surviving off dollar pizza slices, hopping on trains to castings and cattle calls, sneaking into auditions, trying to make friends, and just feeling like
You were sneaking into auditions.
yeah, man,
What do you mean by that?
well, like back in the day, they do these castings. I know a lot of stuff is like audition tapes, but back then they still have it. But like, you'd go in, you'd sign your name, you'd have this thing called like a Z card, where it's like a giant business card with photos, your specs on it, your agent, your email, phone number. You give that to them. They interview you for like a couple minutes, take your photos, and you dip. So I would literally just pull up and just try to pitch myself and like audition in a sense, maybe try to, just because I knew like, hey, you're not going to have no Filipino Mexican out here. I'm going to probably be the only one out here that's like that. So
Did you ever have to lie?
a little bit, honestly, like Filipinos, luckily we're so racially ambiguous. Like I've pulled up and said I was Puerto Rican before just because they were looking for like certain types of Latinos for the body. Yeah, la Borican. Hey, I just be pulling up, just trying to, do my best to play the part,
Whatever you want me to be.
Yeah, but like later on down the line, I realized like just tapping into who I am.
When I'm on the West Coast, I'm Mexican. If I'm in New York, I'm Puerto Rican. That's like what people think I am, like depending where I'm at.
No, straight up, man. But that New York grind really taught me like the value of kind of just understanding who you are and try to amplify that versus try to blend into what you think these people want.
Mm.
Because they don't really know what they want. They're just trying to go with what's the next trending look, or like who's the next top model or whatever, like what's popping on the internet or TV right now. So yeah, it was definitely a grind. I didn't really make much money, and I kind of almost quit and didn't want to pursue any other things and just go back to school at the time.
So what kept you involved?
So
did you discover in New York, like, I'm gonna stay with this, or did you go like, I'm coming back to LA? So
it's funny. So what ended up happening was I came back to LA, well, San Diego, just because that's where I'm from originally. Yeah. So I signed with like a small agency there, was grinding a little bit also. Like, so this is like, I'm like 22, 23.
And are you still working like regular jobs?
Yeah, working regular job, man. I used to be a pizza delivery driver while I was in school, man. Shout outs. Actually, no, they ain't sponsoring this video. I ain't you know what I mean? But yeah, I used to deliver pizzas, you know, get tip money. Used to drive around in a 93 Civic all beat up, you know what I mean? Just trying to make ends meet. And just when I came back from New York and then signed with a San Diego agency, was trying to build within my community there, started working with like just my friends who had small brands, developed more like a streetwear aesthetic and look, just because that was kind of like what I was more passionate about versus the fashion stuff where you don't really see people like us, you know, in these higher end campaigns.
Right.
So kind of tapped into my local community, connected with like my local artists, photographers, cinematographers, filmmakers, and just try to like build with my people, you know. Didn't really think about the money, just wanted an opportunity to, you know, just get in front and behind of the camera and just try to create something that, you know, felt personal to me. So from there, like, just grateful to my community. Shout out Dago again. And then I kind of developed this smaller portfolio that felt more true to me. And from there, I was able to sign with an agency in LA. Shout out SLU, Sports Lifestyle Unlimited. But then before I decided to start working with them, I actually wanted to take a chance to go to the Philippines and model and just see what that life could be over there, just because that's kind of where I was first originally recruited, was to go overseas, do like Pinoy Big Brother, or it was you know.
Oh my God.
She's a Pinoy Big Brother. Yeah.
Yes, PBV is the biggest thing in the Philippines. It's like that's their launch pad to stardom.
High key. And they're like, oh, maybe, you know, I was talking with an Asian at the time over there, Jonas Gafud, shout out to Mercator Models. They, at the time, they were repping Pia Wurtzbach, who won Miss Universe.
Yeah.
So he was my agent in the Philippines at the time. And he came to the States to meet a couple of other Phil-Am models that they were going to recruit to try to bring over to the Philippines and work. So I was like, all right, I'm going to take this chance, live out there for 3 months minimum and try to audition and, you know, try to see how things go and hopefully use that platform to jumpstart my career when I come back to LA, and hopefully that will get traction, because I guess back in the day, that was kind of like the model of how you grow in the industry was, you know, like you go to other countries, you get tear sheets, like I'm in this magazine, I did this campaign. So when you come to LA and let's say you're auditioning or you're going to a casting for some other big brand, they see that you've already done some quality work and they're more inclined to hire you. You know,
do people still do? Is that something that is still done now?
I would say so. Yeah. I just feel like it depends on the type of clientele you want to work with and like the type of brand you want to connect with and how you want to represent yourself as like a model or an artist or whatever.
Got it.
So yeah, so went over there, but what ended up happening was I ended up only being there for a month just because I lost one of my closest friends. He passed away, and I just didn't have the strength or the desire to be there, just because knowing that someone who believed in me and pushed me to pursue my dreams wasn't around anymore. So I'm like, man, I got to go back home and pay my respects to my buddy, you know. Rest in peace, Omar Alvarez, you know, shout outs to my homies on Escondido, San Diego. Y'all know who it is, you know. So Omar, man. So shout outs to him, rest in peace. He's like one of my brothers that really pushed me to, you know, just go all in and just, you know, not hold back and take every step to be the best person I could be in whatever field I choose. So because of losing him, it kind of made me be like, man, I got to just get back to LA and pursue what I really want, which is like acting and being in bigger commercials and entertainment, not just like cut a check and get my photo taken, which is still great if that's what you want to do, you know. But I always saw myself doing things at at the highest level.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do something, like try to hit a home run, not just get on first base.
Would you say like would you say you could point at a moment where you're like, this was sort of a defining moment for me that redirected the trajectory of where I was going? Would you say that was that moment, or it doesn't have to be if there's a different moment? But
there's definitely multiple moments, but I would say like that was the one that helped me take a risk, just because I had the comfortability of like the support of my family living at home, and while I was also trying to like finish and navigate school as a film school student, and I kind of felt like, okay, I got signed to an agency in LA. That's sometimes the hardest step, just getting signed. And, at the time I wasn't really familiar with how the industry worked. So to me, that was a big deal. It's like, okay, I already have the representation. I tried commuting from San Diego to LA.
You were signed in LA?
Yeah, I was signed in LA before I left for the Philippines.
Modeling, theatrical?
Just modeling, theatrical, and commercial.
Across the board?
Across the board. But it's funny because that agency got bought out. So now it's a new agency. Business stuff, shouts to Option Agency. That's one of my other reps. But so I was with SLU. They were kind of like my main agency at the time. And, shouts to Karen Osborne. She's an amazing agent that really believed in me and, gave me the platform to, just represent myself and, just go out there and try to book some jobs, But yeah.
Were they encouraging of like you going to the Philippines since you were already signed to them?
Yeah, they were actually, just because I was freshly signed to them, and I told them, like, hey, like I want to try this thing. I'm still like kind of developing. I'm still kind of a developing model. Like I didn't really have a strong portfolio or diverse portfolio. It was mostly just cool streetwear stuff. I shot with my buddies, and then maybe I had like one headshot photographer I shot with that I paid for. But most of the stuff I had was just my friends supporting me and just trying to support my friends. Vice versa. And then I'd also do shoots where like I'd bring my own wardrobe, like, hey, bro, you want to shoot me in this look real quick, outside of your own clothes, just so that
so you just have some options.
Yeah, I'd try to like, negotiate and, squeeze in some things I need, I scratch your back, you scratch mine type, and then, so when I went to LA and I started working, I was commuting from San Diego and LA. Like at the time it was in-person auditions. So, man, I would literally be driving. Man,
whenever they called you up, 2 hours, we go to audition.
No,
it's on the west side.
And I'd be living in San Diego, so they'd literally hit me up sometimes less than 24 hours, like, hey, can you make this audition 10 a.m. Santa Monica? Okay, bet. I'm going to make it work. So I literally would just commute. I'll be on that grind, and then sometimes I'm already on my way back. I just got to San Diego, and then I get another one. And so I'd be doing this commute almost every other day, you know what I mean? Or just as much. I wouldn't say no, just because I was new.
Yeah, I'm still in the area. I'm in the area.
Yeah,
but still right down the street.
Yeah, they knew I lived in San Diego, but I let it be known, like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. So I'm willing to do whatever I can to make it work, And then, but yeah, it was a taxing commute, just because eventually I got into a really bad car accident. Almost lost my life. So that's another defining moment, just because of it gets messy, right? And then so it made me realize, like, man, like, I can't do this commute anymore. Like, I gotta eventually.
Did it happen while you were commuting, or did it happen like
it was on the way back?
Related.
Yeah, on the way back. So I remember I booked probably my first Nike job. So it was actually after a booking. So it's my first shoot I ever did with Nike.
Bro, you were too hyped.
Yeah, so I was hyped. I was like, I was feeling invincible. Like, man, I'm super good.
You put those Air Force Ones to the floor.
Yup.
Shit.
Yeah, man. And it was just like a late commute. I was waiting for traffic to die down. And then, you know how it is, like that area in downtown where it's, the crazy traffic. I forgot where it is, but it's by Union Station, like where it gets all crazy.
Oh, yeah, the 101.
Yeah.
All that. Right.
I like shit myself when I first started driving.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm never there.
Yeah, just trying to merge. So I think this guy did an illegal U-turn somewhere, and then I ended up rear-ending him. But because I rear-ended him, it's my fault, even though he did the illegal U-turn. So it's just one of those accidents where it's like, man, another defining moment. Like, I was broke, and I was to spend that entire paycheck to get my car fixed. And then I already knew my insurance was going to go up. I'm like, dang, man. So I was taking the train for 3 months while I was working like a lot of jobs. So I started to book more. I was catching a flow, but I was really grinding. Like my mom would come with me and drop me off on set because I didn't have a car, or I'd take the train. I also had some friends that lived in LA, so they just picked me up.
Couch surf.
Yeah, easily.
When I first was doing LA, I was couch surfing.
Yeah, man.
I was just like staying for a week on people's couches and shit like that.
Yeah.
Place.
No, for real. Like I had family, my cousins, like putting me on. I had family in like Carson or Anaheim. Like I'd probably just stay there for the time being before I'd go to set or my callback or audition. And yeah, man, after like 3-4 months of doing that, saved enough money, that's when I was able to get another car. And I'm like, all right, man, I got to make this move to LA and do it ASAP just because I felt the, just the flow of things coming. I'm like, hey, you got to ride the wave of blessings as long as you can, just because this industry is very volatile, a lot of ups and downs. So you got to really ride that wave while it's good. Like when you want a generational run, you got to hit stride as long as you can, because eventually things will get slow, especially around the holidays, like once it gets between like December, January, and then it starts back up again. So it's like you really got to like grind, stack up your bread, because that modeling money could go quick just because you make it, the way you make the money is a blessing, like coming from minimum wage and then getting like a good check. It's like, dang, man, like life-changing.
I have an audition question for you.
Yeah.
Because I feel like everybody has one of these. Maybe you don't. It's okay if you don't. But is there like an audition for a commercial, theatrical, whatever, where you were like, I fucking bombed that shit, but then you end up booking it?
Oh yeah.
Do you have one of those stories?
Yeah, honestly, I have a crazy one.
Okay.
So I booked this one commercial. We shot this all the way out in like Disney World in Florida, and I booked this role as like the Prince Charming role for this spec where it was about Cinderella and she's at the park, and it was like for a quick scene where I was only in the commercial for like 5-10 seconds, but like it was one of those things where they wanted me to like ballroom dance in the spot, and it's like, I don't know how to waltz or ballroom dance, but we just had to just do it in the audition, and I just felt really weird. Like I came up from like a b-boy background, so I was like, yeah, I'm just about to, but I didn't know. I was like, all right, I'm gonna just draw back. Yeah, straight up. I was about to just do what I was comfortable with,
Did you know beforehand that you had to do that, or did you just find out that you had to ballroom dance?
No, no. It's funny because when I came into the audition, I was coming in for something else. But then they changed my role for the callback for Prince Charming. And then I was literally in there for like 2 minutes. And then
Damn, that's an ego boost.
Yeah.
Like, I went in for bum on the street, and then they decided to change me to fucking Prince Charming.
No, it was funny, because I was literally in there for like a couple minutes. And they're like, okay, you're good. And then I was like, that's it? And I remember I was late to the audition. And I remember I was late because, my father had passed away. And I flew back in for the callback. No, he passed away within like that same week. So I came in to see my family, and just figure out everything that happened.
New York
in Utah. So my family ended up, my father's born and raised in Arizona, but he like had his family. My sisters grew up in Utah, and then so I was out in Utah when I got the callback. Had to pull back up there to do the job, or go to the callback. Didn't think I was going to get it just because of like everything going on. And, the shoot dates are around like when we're going to do the funeral and stuff. Uh-huh. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to make it. But my agents, they always want you to, they want you to communicate about the dates. But, you just say you're available until you're not available, and then because they might be flexible with you. But the moment you're saying stuff about like, oh, this is conflicting, I got this, unless it's an emergency and it's just something that's, take the job, make your agents happy, So, yeah, I was kind of like not really expecting it. And then when I'm hopping on the flight back, I had to find out I booked the job. And then it was one of those things where I had some friends that were also on the job, but they were there for like multiple days. They're shooting through the night because they're shooting at the park.
Yeah. When it's closed.
When it's closed, right? So they're working like long hours on set, like 12 hours. Like right when the park is like in the twilight of it closing, and then until like 6 a.m. So it was crazy because I flew in. I think I got there at like noon, and I fit that same day, and then we were going to start shooting that same day, probably at like 3 or 4 in the morning.
Did you have like a cape and shit, like a
yeah, no, well, not a cape. The clip was actually like she was coming down like a staircase where there was like this ballroom dance sequence. So we had like backup dancers behind us. And then so we had the choreograph where she's coming down the stairs and I'm out catching her all gracefully.
You're right.
You know what I mean? On some Prince Charming. You know what I mean? It was,
A little CC and then.
Yeah, straight up. But yeah, it was crazy because it was really just for that moment, you know, just for that clip. And then so after that, I got to fly out the next day back to my family for the funeral.
Oh.
So everything kind of was like
out.
aligned. It was kind of like, you know, kind of full circle. Like I felt like the universe, God, like, you know, the ancestors were trying to help me get this bag while trying to, you know, teach me about faith and teach me to like, hey, you know, like if this opportunity is happening, you know, try your best to make it happen. Don't just say no to everything, you know, but yeah, I felt there was like some sort of anointing with this opportunity. Like I had to take it, even though it was kind of conflicting and I didn't really know what was going to happen, you know, with the scheduling and the dates.
Right.
You know, you just gotta, you know, hope for the best sometimes. But yeah, that was a fun, interesting situation, you know.
Yeah. And so you know, I hear what you're saying about this kind of you listen to your instinct or, you know, whatever it is, this sort of this higher voice that you had to kind of commit to the job, even though you had all this going on.
Mm-hmm.
I know that now you're fully independent of, you know, external work. You're doing modeling, commercial, theatrical work full time.
Yep.
Was there a point where you were like, yeah, I'm going to quit my job or I'm not going to take on a new job? Like, what was the moment where you said, I'm really fully going to, you know, dive in, feet first and, you know, commit to this as an artist? Because that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
That's where you're really going
You know,
off of your own, you know, you're relying on yourself now, you know?
Straight up. You know, it's crazy just because I've been doing this full time for over 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's one of those things.
Were you full time?
I was always full time.
I never at a Disney.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
you
was
were already
always
doing
full
it.
time. Yeah, I was full time the moment I moved to LA. So the crazy part is, the moment I moved to LA, I only had probably like $2K in my pocket, and I already put my first month,
Like just
my
the
second
video
month.
game too, not even $2,000.
Yeah, like
He's
straight up, like just $2K. Like that's all I had, and so I only had enough for like a couple months of rent and, you know, other expenses, and then so it was just by faith. But I was already auditioning prior, so I had some things that were like on hold, that jobs I didn't really know I was in a book. But literally, once I made that leap of faith and committed, that's kind of when the blessings started showering.
It's funny how that happens. I know so many people like that. When they commit, it's just like the opportunities unfold.
Yeah.
Now, for you, were you like intentionally trying to get to lots of, you know, we talked about this, you know, with, you know, Maya right now. She's going out to who's my girlfriend, everyone. Shout out to Maya. She's going out to a lot of networking things because, you know, it's important to meet people. Is that something you were also doing at the time, or were you just mostly hustling?
No, I was definitely hustling.
Okay.
Yeah, like, because I didn't really know anybody. I kind of developed my community just through just local San Diego friends that moved to LA.
Yeah.
Or people who I met in the audition room. You know, when you're competing against other actors for a spot in a commercial or a TV show, and you're just kind of sitting there and hearing people audition, people are screaming or whatnot. Kind of gets nerve-wracking, and just from like the anxiety of the pressure that you kind of put on yourself, you try to make friends and lighten the room, you know, try to, you know, silence the noise of silence, you know, or you know, yeah. So it's
know, with the audition room thing, that's how I always describe people who look alike. When it's like you don't look like twins or anything, but it's like if I'm talking about you and they're like, "What's it look like?" I'd be like, we don't look like identical, but we'd be in the same casting room together. Like
exactly.
So I started to describe people when they look alike.
What is that? What is the description for you guys?
Hella handsome.
Yeah, we just I get racially ambiguous a lot.
Hella.
You know, if anything, I go out for more Latino stuff than I do Filipino stuff or Asian stuff. But it's funny enough though, because I got kind of more my big breaks on shows out in Hawaii. And
I was gonna say I saw your clip. I always see your clips of like.
Yeah, no. Shout out to Rescue High Surf. Shout out NCS Hawaii. You know, Bring It Back, and then the other show, Animal Kingdom. So anything that was kind of centered around like beach culture or island culture or like just so where brown people are kind of in the environment, that's kind of where I got my opportunities.
And got those luscious locks.
Yeah, for real.
Connected to work in Hawaii.
Okay, so when I was still modeling, well, I'm still modeling, but when I was trying to pursue like just more modeling stuff full time, because I was still developing like my commercial and theatrical portfolio, modeling was kind of like how I kind of made ends meet, just because when it comes to like commercials, it takes a lot of like audition technique, like you got to take classes sometimes, you got to kind of, it's a lot of repetition and practice, kind of, and I feel like self-tapes have really helped with the skill set of getting better at auditions just because you're more comfortable in front of the camera. Okay, so, man, it's a long story. So I luckily have a lot of family out in Hawaii, out on the Big Island. And at the time, Hawaii is they really try to support local artists and support like local actors. So I kind of finesse in a way, my bad, where I would get hired as a local. And I'd use my aunt's address, my tita's address out in Ke'au on the Big Island. And one of the agencies at the time was called Wilhelmina Hawaii. So they had a division out there. But eventually the name got changed to ADR Agency.
I was like, you act like we haven't heard of Wilhelmina.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever heard of that agency? Model agency?
Yeah.
Familiar?
Right. But yeah, they used to be called Wilhelmina Hawaii. I think they were licensing the name, but then they changed the name to ADR Agency. So shouts to Ryan Brown. That's the head CEO of the agency. So I remember at the time, because I had family out there, I wanted to see if I could work out in that market. And I felt like I'd get more luck in representing, because there's more people that look like us out there. So they're more inclined to hire, just brown people, Filipinos, Native Hawaiians, Asians. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, yeah, I submitted some of my headshots and materials to him, and he got back to me. We had a great conversation, and yeah, he signed me to the agency. And then I did some gigs out there, but mostly I was booking more like theatrical shows out there. So it was one of those things where, I kind of was getting my break as an actor through that market just because, representation for brown people and islanders and Filipinos, Koreans, Japanese, just Asian actors, I feel like they do a great job of casting just because, that's just, over there, we're the majority, there's a certain power we carry on over there. So, yeah, so Ryan really put me in position in these auditions to succeed. So really grateful to him and them believing in me, and yeah, just, trying to do my best to make my mama proud,
Is there something you feel like from, the beginning to where you're at now, where there was a strategy you thought would really work? A lot of people think, you just put yourself out there a lot, whatever it is. Is there something that you learned along this journey that was actually a surprise for you in how you moved through your career to find success that you didn't expect to find, early on from sort of, you hear all the things you're supposed to do, right? Submit all the headshots to the agencies, call every day to see if they can send them the box of chocolate, get the headshots. Say like, is there anything that you've learned along the way that you feel has had a big impact that maybe was something you came to learn?
Yeah. No, honestly, like I've always tried, my hardest and my best to stay authentic to who I am, just because I feel like the industry, especially when I was young, you would listen to your reps and your agents a lot about like what you should do to book jobs. And I sometimes feel like, they have great intention of trying to help you. But at the end of the day, you got to walk into those audition rooms and represent yourself. So there was a fear of mine that, representing me and being authentic to me would backfire, just because like I grew up a little bit more edgy. I grew up in like Section 8 poverty. Sometimes I like to talk in slang. I'm grateful that I know how to code switch a little bit. So it's one of those things where I kind of just try to be not unauthentic. I try to be.
I try to be as fake as possible. That's what I learned.
Right. I try to be authentically myself in every room I come in, and I feel that really transformed my perception of the industry. Just because a lot of people talk about, Hollywood's fake, this, that, and the third. Yeah. But yeah, the people who are true to themselves, people who have like high character value, people who just know how to uplift others in the room, I feel like stay working. So in my mind, it's never about trying to, go with the trends or go with what you think can get you work. It's just being you. I feel like it's more than enough. To me, that's kind of working in this industry to just help me navigate and find who I am, just because, growing up mixed race, growing up Filipino, growing up Mexican, you kind of are always pulled in either direction, whether you're like a Nosabo kid and you're not Mexican enough, or, you didn't grow up speaking Tagalog. Are you even really Filipino? Like you're too tall, or you look too mixed. And it's when I decided that I'm going to just tap into both my cultures and both my struggles and both my identities, I feel that's when I was able to really like transform and allow people to see our culture and see our identity and, just elevate the standard of like what it means to be a Filipino or a Mexican. Like we could be mixed. We're not just one type of thing or one type of way.
I was wondering that because as someone who's not in the industry in that way, I'm not an actor or a model, I feel like...
Cab. Because she modeled some of my hoodies the other day. She's like, I've never modeled before. The angle she was hitting, I was like, why did I even stand in this shoot? I look like a dumb.
Yeah, I'm a really bad...
She was like, no. I was like,
I try.
Stop it. Cap.
You gotta stay humble. You gotta stay humble. Okay. So
my bad. Go ahead with your question. I just call you out on that one.
As I was saying, as someone who's not a model or an actor, I feel like my impression of that profession is that there's a cast, right? There's a description. You contort yourself to fit it. They have an idea of what they want for the campaign. You contort yourself to fit this image. So how do you balance that of like being an individual person, like you said, like bringing all your history and your uniqueness into the job while still being marketable, I guess?
No, that is true. It's funny just because like I know Southeast Asians and Latinos are sometimes the least marketed demographic too, but we are such huge consumers in a lot of media and a lot of capitalism. We really invest a lot into, local businesses or just other industries, like like Latino families are some of the biggest moviegoers, but like there's hardly any shows or movies where they're the leads or it's a certain type of look as a Latino, right? So I feel like, you said stepping into, my authentic self, I feel like is one of those things where it's going to inspire other people. Even if I'm not getting cast, it's going to inspire casting directors to hire more authentically, just because I feel like people are so focused more on, what actor or what person is going to help sell, when really it's more about like the authenticity of the story that's going to sell, because I feel like a lot of projects, regardless if it's like a commercial or a TV show or a film, like seeing a fresh new face that gets people asking questions is interesting and exciting to watch and see. So it's one of those things where, just navigating my own identity through my art, where it's like modeling or whether it's I'm working on like a pilot or a short film, showcasing those stories, I feel like is how we help navigate the industry and push new, fresher narratives. It kind of takes all of us in a sense, just because, they don't understand the market value and how much money is in our community. It's up to us to show the value. Right. So, yeah, like just trying my best to, wear every type of hat and help others, regardless of pay, is I feel like what we can do to really help and grow our industry.
Well, and tell me if you feel differently. But I also think, from the other side of the casting table as the artist, I think when you're being called in, I've always thought of it less of like contorting yourself to fit the role. And rather, not that there aren't things you should be doing to try to, have a process to booking, but at the end of the day, you just have to bring yourself to the table. You could go to 1,000 different talkbacks with casting directors. You could do the same scene, and every casting director will give you different notes. They'll give you opposite notes. So to me, at the end of the day, you just got to bring yourself, how you view that character, your brushstrokes on it, and you got to go, hope that the cast, not even hope, but you're just going, hey, casting director, if this is the type of shit you're looking for, I'm your guy.
Yep,
if not, then, you know, there's 20 other people in the lobby. I hope one of them's the right one, but it'd be impossible to try to please
It's like dating.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just got to bring yourself to the table. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, it's crazy just because I really feel like I owe it to like hip hop culture and like black music and even my Chicano culture, Filipino culture, just my community and identity for allowing me to, you know, navigate myself as like a human being with my interests. And I feel like it's one of those things where, you know, being authentic, it takes time sometimes because it's a challenge just because the world tries to tell you who you are.
They also don't really know who you are yet, especially at a young age.
Exactly. And I feel like it's through other arts and other mediums is where you kind of like find your soul and find your spirit, you know. And then as an actor and as an artist, that's how you use the other tools to project that. Because I feel like actors can't just, I just act. Like you got to do other things and other means of art so that you could find your story and then kind of use that within the characters that you're portraying, you know, add a piece of yourself, but then now within the circumstances in the world, like navigate that through the character's lens, you know? Because at the end of the day, you still pull from yourself. You don't really, you know, create like a crazy circle. You know, you could do that. Everyone has their own method. But for me, it's like I always try my best to take from a little bit from my own experiences and then use my imagination on top of that, you know, just to keep a certain level of like present authenticity. So I'm not anticipating anything. I'm not having prejudged ideas. Everything is present to the moment whenever I'm doing something. Even on the commercial, like, you know, they'll have lines and stuff. It's only 15 seconds, but like I'll come prepared, but I don't try to be like, this is how I'm going to do it and they're going to love it. It's like, nah, I just pull up myself. I'll go off my partner. My partner's a little bit more shy. Like, okay, I'm going to just go off their vibe and try to be present and authentic and not try to like overdo it. Because it's like casting directors know when someone is thirsty and they know when someone's really trying to be liked.
Everybody books a job they like either they didn't give a fuck about or they thought they bombed.
Yeah.
They're like, man, fuck that shit.
Exactly.
And it's always like, you booked that one.
Yeah. In my mind, just show up, do the best you can in that moment, and then leave. Sometimes like those are the most memorable auditions. Like, dang, he just killed it. He was in there for 2 minutes. Didn't ask no question. You could ask questions, but you know, he was just smooth and got out. Damn, that's the guy I want to work with. We're going to finish on time and early, you know, and that's what every producer wants. Every director wants that. So try to just move with that level of professionalism. And I feel like, you know, that type of poise and gravitas when you're in the room, that bravado, like they feel it. They ain't going to question it if you the guy, you know, like, and by sometimes being the guy, it takes time, like understanding who you are, you know. That's why I feel like, you know, as an artist, like you can't just do one form of art. You got to try other things. Like if you don't,
you do, you write as well.
Yeah, you know,
things.
I grew up like.
Did you decide to? Have you always been doing your hand at writing and these other things, or was that stuff you explored later on?
I feel like I explored that kind of later on, just because I wasn't like the most academically gifted student. I was kind of always like in my imagination, and I was always like really active in sports. So it was one of those things where, you know, music, and I grew up in like, I did like band, like my family, they loved to sing, you know, I wasn't blessed with the vocal chops, but I was in choir, like, you know, church choir, stuff like that. But yeah, so I feel like it took time, especially with my writing, just because I have other projects I'm working on, short films and stuff like that, and features I'm working on with other friends and collaborators. And I feel like music was kind of like the way that helped me with my writing, or even breaking. Like hip hop culture taught me how to tell my story, just because I feel like, you know, in essence, like hip hop is one of those art forms that kind of like heal your spirit, you know. And I feel like it comes from like black music, you know, jazz music is also another form of storytelling, improv too in the moment. And I feel like, you know, breaking, like just the styles and the art form taught me to tell my story through a dance. And then from the dance, I kind of got inspired to like write from like rap music, poetry, you know, the Dante Boscos, the poetry slams, you know, like that era in the 90s, 2000s, like Love Jones, where they're spoken word, you know, stuff like that, like inspired me to like pick up a pen and try to write and tell my story. And then from there, it translated to more scripts. So I like, if I could write 16 bars, I could write a scene. right? Like, so that's how I interpret it. But I wasn't necessarily the most gifted creative writer in high school just because I was horrible in spelling and like, like I hated doing like those essays you had to do on the spot. Like I would always get so much anxiety trying to like do like 5 paragraphs in an hour, and like, so, but I feel like writing scripts, storytelling has always been like that's like a cultural pastime within our community, right? So
do you think like the courage that you learn to kind of be yourself, take the leap with entertainment, with acting, do you think that is translated into your willingness to kind of try out other endeavors that you don't necessarily feel qualified for or whatever? Do you think that's kind of giving you a little more gusto to just do those things?
No, most definitely. Like I would say acting definitely taught me how to, find my spirit, and it taught me how to like navigate my emotions, and it was definitely very therapeutic. I suggest anybody to take let me rephrase that. I suggest everybody should try to take an acting class. I took a Meisner-based technique, and everything is very much based on your imagination. But at the same time, like you still got to pull from your own truths. And then you kind of ask these questions, like, why did I feel that way? When he says, like, why should I feel this way if they say that? And then you kind of find things in yourself that kind of teach you, okay, I felt this way because of this. This happened to me in my real life, or this happened to me within my character. And, whether it be love or betrayal, or it could even be
your wife kissing somebody at the club.
Exactly, right? One of those, something like that. Like you take from those ideas and those experiences, and you just try to find your own truth in those feelings.
Right. Because even like your imagination itself, you think it's separate from your life, but you're pulling from you, obviously.
Yeah.
You're seeing everything from your lens. There's a reason why you're conjuring up the images and scenarios that you do. You still have to look within.
Exactly. And I feel like it's, I really owe it to acting for even my own mental health, just because it teaches you human psychology. Like you're more focused on your partner. You're more focused on like their actions and what they're doing, like how they're sitting, the tone in their voice, all those little nuanced things that you wouldn't necessarily always pay attention to unless you're really, really trying to figure out what's going on, I feel like there are. It just depends on the role. And I feel like sometimes that works for the role. Like, I remember this one film. Oh, man, it's called, it's a horror movie that just came out. Weapons. Like, the guy who played the crackhead. Like, he was so not self-aware.
Oh, yeah.
And he was phenomenal in that. He played that role so perfect. Like, sometimes, like, having the awareness and the lack of self-awareness, like, finding that balance for the character, like, you kind of need it a little bit. It's like a yin and yang, because in general, you still got to hit a mark. You got to, take direction from the director. So you need to have a level of awareness in your skill set on set, because it's not just
privacy too.
Yeah. So definitely like having that yin and yang with it. Because I've always connected acting to like martial arts. In my mind, it's like, every acting school has their technique. Like the Meisners.
I see you have your kung fu is strong.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I do Strasbourg. Oh, that's the freaking MMA or whatever of acting. Or I'm just making analogies. People are going to get upset. Like, oh, my God, But, that's how...
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, depending on the role, it's like how you approach which technique you're going to use. It's like when you're tackling the script, or like you're... say you're fighting somebody and they're more of a wrestler. Like, okay, I got to use more BJJ. I feel like this technique would work better for this scenario, this script, this story.
I'm going to need the blicky for this one.
Straight up. Yeah, you never know.
The blicky. If you I need a gun. Like if the martial arts too good, like I just need a gun for this one.
No, straight up.
Kenan, we got to wrap up here in a second.
Damn.
I want to know. It goes by quick, right? I wanted to ask you one more question, and I think this is just for folks out there, Filipino or not Filipino or whatever, that are just aspiring to do what you do.
Yeah.
I know that regardless of the method you use to get into the industry, to gain agents, to book jobs, the most important thing is the why we have, because it's hard, it can suck. You can deal with people you don't like. And if you don't have that foundation of what's driving you, none of it will be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to kind of end with, for you, what's your why?
Man,
I should have probably put that in the email question. So,
nah, it's all good.
but I didn't. So we're going to get the natural.
Now, honestly, like, it's one of those things where, for me, it's more survival. Like, I don't really have anything else to lean on. This has always kind of been like my dream. And I've always been supported by my family, where, like, if this is what you want to do and you want to succeed in this, you can't really have a plan B. You kind of have to go all money in, 10 toes down on yourself. And it's one of those things where, I'm grateful for my family. So if anything, my why has just always been my family. My mom, she's always kind of been like my number one cheerleader, my number one fan. My Lola, rest in peace, she was always that person that showed up to everything I did. Whether it be like a football game, a practice, sometimes she'd tag along with my mom to an audition, and they waited in the car for me, so for them, like, that has always been my why, like, to do them proud and to find a way to, uplift them and take care of them, just because it's important within our culture to take care of our family and our elders, right? Even if they're not here, it's like, how do you pay that forward, right? Sometimes it's showing up for your aunt, your tita or your tito on their birthday, the ones you don't really talk to, that, that annoying family member, but it's like, hey, like, that's still my uncle, let me show up for them.
Did you want to name that relative specifically?
Nah. I don't know.
Tag him.
But it's all love no matter what, We all got family business type stuff, so. But
You
it's
said
always,
messy.
messy, right?
We said messy.
I know. Damn. But no, but other than that, like, family is always the number one reason, like, to pursue my dreams, to create an opportunity and a platform so that, we lay it brick by brick so that other people could come in and, walk the same path and make their own path. Because, coming up, like, we probably only had a few people that we looked up to, like Dante Bosco, for example. I know Manny Jacinto's been really out here grinding on the low, but now he's really on a higher level pedestal.
Yeah.
So many other people that came before us.
Shout out Ernie Reyes Jr.
Yeah, easily. Thank you.
Kino.
Yup. Like, we could keep naming names, but, hopefully one day I could be that name that people recognize. And, like, regardless of, my bank account size, it's, we all want some big numbers, but you know what I mean? But regardless of that, the size of that number, I feel so blessed and grateful that I've been able to do this long, and I've been able to give free game to anybody that's hit me up and, try to help them navigate this industry, just because I didn't really have a mentor to tell me what to do. It was more so I was just moving off my own instinct and moving in a way where I just wanted to see other people win, and I just wanted to support other people who are struggling just like me, because I know you got a Lola. I know your Lola went through some things, you know what I mean? Like, I want to do what I can to help you support that, because I know how much it meant to me when, I got that opportunity and I was able to help my family. It's like the kababayan in us to, it's like the Kapwa culture, to uplift one another. And I do that for every person, as long as you're a good person. I don't care if you're Filipino, you Latino, you black, white, whatever. Like, I'm always going to show love and support and give you game. It may be different just because my upbringing was different, but I'm always going to try to share that knowledge and find a way to pay it forward.
Right. Last question, where can we find you? Any projects you want us to check out coming up?
Man, we really cooking, honestly. Okay, you can find me at Kenan Eames on Instagram. That's like my main, source of how I connect with my people. I don't really be on Twitter much. I keep the socials low key, but I post my work here and there. And yeah, I got a bunch of projects I've been working on, honestly. So I have a short film that I'm working on with one of my homegirls, Celine Chantel, amazing actress, writer, producer. The short film's called Reflections. It's about like a young Filipino couple, a coming of age, like romantic drama, and just like the nuances of like young love and the things you go through, trying to navigate your identity and culture and, just the tropes of young love, right? Yeah, so that was inspired by some true events from my homegirl Celine, and I was really grateful that she brought me on board to, help navigate that story as a writer and as an actor in that, the trust and the vulnerability. So really grateful for that. And then I have another project, a pilot I've been working on with my other homegirl, Megan Wang. Shouts to her. It's called Big Wang Energy. It's like
I wouldn't know about that.
right. It's a little comedy pilot. It's kind of inspired by New Girl, but it has more like Asian American actors and actresses in it, just because she's Chinese American. So I'm really trying to navigate that space where we're telling more like Asian and brown stories.
Tight, man.
And then I got another feature I've been writing and working on. You could help support on our GoFundMe. It's called Revelry. It's a film about Filipino American ex-naval. Let me run that back 1 second. Okay, so the other film that I got cooking up is this film called Revelry. It's about this Filipino. It's about this Filipino.
It's about what?
I don't want to
about
race again. It's about this Filipino American Navy veteran who's going through the loss of his grandmother, and through a dream, he's navigating the loss of like some of his old friends and failures, and his Lola is kind of helping him heal through the experience. And it's all happening during the holidays, during a Christmas dream he had, because his sister spiked this drink, and he's going through this really funny, weird existential crisis in his 30s, like losing his job, his relationship, etc. So that's something I'm working on with my other buddy, Mark De Leon, amazing director, DP out of San Diego. He's also a military veteran. So I'm always trying to tap into, people, I'm always trying to tap in with my community and people who are trying to tell authentic stories,
Nice.
So, yeah. So those are just some projects I'm working on. But yeah, just be on the lookout. I got some TV shows we about to try to be on. So we auditioning, be on the lookout for commercials and whatnot. You might see me in your ads.
Prince Charming.
Yeah, you never know.
The next Preparation H.
Yeah.
I see.
For real. I'm trying to get on the pit, you know what I mean? I don't know. I could be a Filipino nurse.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So hopefully I get an audition soon for them, Keep showing love and support,
Hey, man. Well, we appreciate you being on Sweet Spaghetti.
Hell yeah,
I'm
my
having
brother.
fun. Thanks for coming.
I appreciate you.
So great meeting you.
We out.
Yeah.
And 5